Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, who joins us via Skype. Governor, it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Dana. It's great to be on with you. You're right on point.
Well, I appreciate that. And apparently your response was on point as well, because yours was one of the states that, went along and adapted, but didn't have super strict lockdowns, the likes of which we saw in New York and California. And you didn't deal with, when we looked at the numbers of transmissions and fatalities, everyone was accusing governors like yourself and Ron DeSantis and others of somehow encouraging or making the virus worse, which, the statistics don't support that. But in this coronavirus relief bill, there's an inordinate amount of cash that is going to states that have very problematic economies that this is predated this lockdown. States like Illinois that have had problems for 50 years. California, these are states that have been in the red long before this lockdown happened, and it seems as though they're trying to conflate their pre-existing problems with what was caused by their strict restrictions under the lockdown, which obviously exponentially made it worse. And as a result, taxpayer dollars are going more towards those states. And you say that, this has been a problem they've had for a long time. Why are you punishing states like Georgia? We did it right. We didn't suffer because we did it right, at least to the point where we could have. Talk to me about this, Governor, and what is your response to just how these funds are allocated in this bill?
Well, no, this won't be shocking to you. It doesn't even make good common sense. It does predate COVID, has nothing to do with COVID. States that have had a winning economy like we have in Georgia are now a loser in this bill, and states that have been losing because they wouldn't make tough choices even before the pandemic are now all of a sudden a winner. And I've been telling people, if the Trump administration had treated states this way, the national media and Pelosi and Schumer and New York and California and Illinois, they would have been going crazy. They didn't do that. They treated all the states equitably, and now that's the reverse, and you can't even hardly get the national media to even talk about it. New Yorkers are going to get 50% more per capita than Georgians will, and that's just not fair to our citizens. It's not fair to the other, 33 states where this is inequity.
I agree with that. And I was reading when looking at this package, the mandate that really does benefit blue states, they don't make the funding contingent upon the entire population, but it's on the unemployed population. And of course, states, Governor, that have higher unemployment levels because they had greater restrictions, of course they're going to see higher unemployment numbers. That seems to be a really specious measure as to how to direct these funds.
Well, and to me, Dana, I was a small business owner for 35 years, still am. I've always, I've been signing my own paycheck for over 35 years now. People got to work. They got to work to make a living. And now Georgians that are doing that are getting penalized. What they ought to be doing is focused on those that lost their job because of an invisible virus through no fault of their own. That's who they should be trying to help, not helping states with issues financially that they have that predates COVID, some by, 5-10 years. It is really what you called it. It's a blue state bailout in a lot of ways. I'm certainly supportive of the federal response we've gotten in regards to helping deal with coronavirus and get vaccines out and other public health things that we need to be doing. But, I think, almost 80% of this bill is doing something other than that.
Yeah. And you had said previously that you can't go out and tell your constituents, we're talking to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, you can't go out and tell your constituents, okay, keep working, pay your taxes, and then watch all your tax dollars go to states that ran their responses poorly. What are you hearing from voters in your state, Governor, about this?
Oh, people are, I just can't believe it, but it's just kind of, typical, and especially when the leaders in the House and the Senate are from New York and California, two states that this benefits for the most. I can't imagine that our U.S. senators are going to vote for this, but I believe that they're going to. I hope there's some other moderate Democrats like Joe Manchin and perhaps the Democratic senator from Montana that will say, hey, this is ridiculous. We can't treat people in states differently. We got to be fair and equitable, and we certainly shouldn't be penalized for having good economies. That is like the most un-American thing I've ever heard of in my life.
Yeah.
Our economic development pipeline is very deep. We have people that are moving not only to Georgia, but all over the Southeast because it's the case all the way around us. And they're moving out of states like New York and California. And, it's ridiculous. They're getting rewarded for having bad economies.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you, Governor. We have some friends that we have actually a lot of friends that are leaving California, and some of them are considering. One of our friends are considering Georgia, and we're trying to lobby them to get them to move to Texas, but they really like Georgia. So I mean, no, we're
Well,
just a little competition.
Texas is a fine state too, no doubt about it. But
Yeah, I wanted to
it's
ask you as well because you were mentioning, how some of these states, which we've seen it on a national stage, how some of these states just had really poor responses, and you can't have other individuals expect to make up the slack for this. But you were praised because when you were looking at, and it's tough. I mean, even and I have to say, even states like Georgia, states like Florida. I mean, it's still tough when you have what we've never dealt with before, a pandemic. And, in the very beginning stages, nobody knew anything about this. This was brand new. We were starting from the ground floor. Obviously mistakes were going to be made, caution, we're trying to figure out how much caution to deploy. But you were praised because instead of asking for more federal money for any area where Georgia may have had a shortfall, what you did was ask state agents to cut their budgets by 14%. I was looking at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution here that reported on this, and it's not going to be easy, but tell me about your reasoning with that. You're asking some of these state agencies, well, let's just pull back a little bit so we don't have to take this federal money.
Well, look, you got two choices, right? You can either tighten your belt. We thankfully have a balanced budget amendment in Georgia, so we have to balance the budget every year. Going into the pandemic, even before the pandemic, I called on state agencies to cut 4% and 6% in our mid-year and our big budget so that we could fund our priorities, make state government more efficient. That was before COVID. Obviously, everything changed. But because of that, it made the cut that we had to do last year because our revenues dipped for several months there during that just terrible time when nobody knew what was going on. It allowed us to be able to weather that storm. But because we reopened when we did that methodically and worked on two things, protecting lives and livelihoods. Our revenues continued to hold up throughout the year. So our budget cuts went from 14 to 10%, and we made it work. And we're in a great position going into our budget year this year. We've been able to fund back some money to education, public health, public safety. We're actually funding the police here, not trying to defund it. Doing a lot of economic development, kind of shovel-ready projects to keep our people working, help those displaced workers find employment in other areas, get retrained to be able to do that. And so we're doing really good under the circumstances, and it's just it's really kind of demoralizing to be punished for doing good.
Yeah, doing good. And you mentioned, too, keeping people employed as well. Georgia had a relatively low jobless rate compared to a lot, especially the states that had very, very severe restrictions, lockdown during the pandemic. But I was looking at a piece back from 2020. I mean, y'all kept a relatively low jobless rate, about 7.6%. And this was back in July of last year. And even then, you were telling the federal government, no, we can take care of this. The states, that's a novel idea. And I thought that Democrats, because they apparently discovered federalism somewhere along the pathway in 2016, I just thought that they would have celebrated a position like that, Governor. But the Wall Street Journal did. You got praise from them on this.
Well, it's just, I've been through that as a small business owner. I've been where I've thought I was going to lose everything. My wife and I have been sitting there on a Friday night going, gosh, I don't know how we're going to make it. You got two choices. You can either throw in the keys, give it back to the bank, or you can get up and go back to work on Saturday morning and just keep grinding through it. And I felt like that's where we were in the pandemic. And a lot of my Republican colleagues that are governors felt the same way. And we've ground through this, and our people have, and we've worked with the private sector. And, we really asked the question, I think, Dana, like, how do we make this work? Not we can't do this, but how do we make this work? We got to do more than just fight the virus. We got to fight for our economy. We got to fight for our kids being back in the classroom. We got to fight for livelihoods. There's mental health issues. I mean, there's generational problems that the pandemic causes. And I was just trying to alleviate that the best I could. And we're still fighting that every single day, I can promise you.
Yeah, well, that's definitely evident. And what a difference it is when you have state leadership that actually has that small business background compared to Others that don't, they just know French Laundry. That's all they know, and that's where they go dine out in California. But we'll continue watching, Governor, and I'll keep everybody updated as to whether or not we lose this war with our friends, if Georgia wins them or if Texas does. Governor Brian Kemp, the great state of Georgia. Good to talk with you, Governor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless.